On this tape, we just put down a few of the things that took place from the time we met your dad on November the 13th until we left for Florida after having a nice visit at Sea Pines. At 5 p.m., we're going to have a Thanksgiving dinner at the Hilton Head Inn. You know, we have Doc and Ann Bennett here, and we kind of think they're enjoying it. We just now get in from a tour. We were down to Harbor Town. We drove around. We saw Frank Blair, and what do you know? He waved to us. He has a big gang, his family doings this afternoon. I'll put this thing down and try to give you a report on what has happened since we arrived here. You know, we arrived on Thursday, about 2 hours before your dad left. They were playing golf, and Dad stopped at 2249 to pick up the lunch. They had prepared, and he came over in a golf cart from the number 8 green. Grandpa got on a bike and took a ride down the number 16 fairway with the boys. Well, gotta interrupt this thing here now to tell you, but we just returned from a wonderful buffet at the Hilton Head Inn. What food? If I started listing all the food we had, it would use up the entire length of this tape. But boy, did we enjoy it. We're back here at the apartment now, and we're going to watch television for a while. Believe me, what a day. The day isn't ended yet, but I'm telling you, I can't ever remember of having such a Thanksgiving. I think you'll get the same reaction from the rest of the folks. After a sumptuous dinner, we took the Bennetts out around the putting green and the big pool. We even walked down the beach in the moonlight. They were quite impressed. We met some folks there from Long Island. Everybody here and in Harbortown Heritage Village, it's not crowded, but we did see more cars today than at any time we've been here. Maybe about... What a day. We left here at 10:30 this morning. It is now a 4:45, and we've been gone ever since. First thing we did, we walked the beach. We pulled up to Coligny Circle, and you know what we saw up there? That camel that you were writing us about was supposed to be at the farms, but there they have it up there by the Holiday Inn in a real large cage that they built around it, and we said hello to the camel. The beach was perfect today. The sand was nice and hard, and the temperature was ideal. You couldn't have expected to have a better day in June, July, or August. And the crowds are here now. We went also, we had a bite of lunch at Hardee's. We just wanted a snack. And then we went to the marketplace. Ann and Doc had never been to the marketplace, so we thought that was a place to see. And they shopped around. I don't know how much money they spent. Not much, I can tell you that. Well, next step was down to Harbor Town. They wanted to get something down to the grocery bag. So we left the girls out, and they were also going to make some kind of a hairdresser appointment for tomorrow. And Benny and I went back to the car, not knowing what was going on, and here we waited and waited and waited, and we thought they were buying some Key West fashions or something like that. Finally they arrived, and you know what happened? There was a big cruise ship that was docking in front of the harbor master's house by the lighthouse. Unknown to us. Well, we didn't see it dock, but the girls did, and I think I got to get them on the tape to have them tell you about the docking. Anyway, we went back and saw the boat, and it was an American cruise ship. The American Eagle was the name of it. It was out of Connecticut. It stopped at Harbor Town and was going to proceed to Marineland down south of St. Augustine, Florida. So I'm going to have somebody else tell you about the docking, because unfortunately, we didn't see it because we didn't know about it. We were parked in front of the grocery bag. So that's quite a lot of things that happened today. Now, after a bit of a rest, we've decided that perhaps the best place to eat tonight, at least it'll be something novel, is the Pizza Hut, which we hear is very good. We understand you can go up there and get a delicious salad, make your own type, and then buy the pizza to your liking, and that's going to be something. I think that'll top off our our dining for today. I'll get somebody else on here and see if they have some other thoughts.
Right, but Donkey, that's unfair. Oh, Charlie.
Coming in, or whatever it's called.
Well, all I can say is after watching them dock the Delta Queen and the party boat and the chaperone on the choppy rivers of Ohio River, and then watching them dock this in the still waters here in the harbor, they sure had a horrible time getting that thing docked. Well, what did it take, Peg? About an hour, didn't it? I said it took, That's the only way I can describe it, but it was fun watching them.
And plate glass installation. Mr. Smith. We're back again. We had pizza, and we had salad, we had beer. Now, Ann, tell them how you like pizza.
No.
Come on, the machine's
everybody
running.
likes
I don't want,
now,
can't
wait a
waste the
minute.
tape.
Let Peg tell about the pizza.
Next.
No.
Grandma,
Peg, do it.
please tell the children how you like pizza.
We loved it, Rosemary and Margaret and Charlie 3 Sticks. We just loved it. We brought some home. Wish you were here.
Charlie, it was nice talking to you on the phone this morning, but you know, we got a surprise for you. We met 2 of your delightful neighbors, and I'm going to have your neighbor from State College, PA, give you his name and say hello, and they do want to meet you, and we'll be meeting you soon.
Okay, hi, met some friends of yours this summer, Diane and Gary. My name's Buck Matthews, and we live in State College, Pennsylvania. I'm looking forward to meeting you soon. You don't want to say anything, Patty? Okay.
Your address.
Yeah, our address now on the street is 2247 Heritage Villa.
So we'll have more report. We're getting all the information, Charlie, that's going to help us both, because that's what we need, a little cooperation around here and get to know all the people. Here we are, Sunday morning. What a beautiful day. The temperature's up in the mid-70s. It's higher than the mid-70s right now. We just came from church, and we have good news. Our pastor is back from the Cleveland Clinic, and he does not have to have heart surgery. He was on the altar this morning. He didn't say Mass. His assistant said Mass, and he was greeting the people at the outside of the church. I reminded him that we were the couple that just a year ago, that he married us all over again. Oh yeah, Frank Blair, he was sitting right across the aisle from us, he and his wife. So now we're going down to the beach. We really haven't given the beach as much exploring as we want to, so that'll be on the agenda for a while. Last night we went to the Seacrest again. Great fish. That's the second time we've been back there. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, here we are, back from quite an excursion. We walked the beach. We were down, I had Doc up to the 18th hole, and boy, we saw a birdie shot, a real birdie shot. The fella put the ball up to, if it was a tight game, you wouldn't make a gimme out of it, but if you were liberal, you would have made a gimme out of it. I don't know, we didn't watch him, because we went over to watch them teeing off, but Doc says it was an 18-incher, and I'd have given it, but it was really a wonderful day. The tide was low and the beach was wide. Then we went touring. We went South Beach. We went in a lot of nooks and corners of sea pines that we'd never been in before. The delightful part about going into streets and finding out where they lead. Sometimes they're dead end, but you can always wiggle along and get back out. But that is the one way to see the residential section of sea pines, is just keep riding around and exploring. And do you know what? We patronized Colonel Sanders just about a half an hour ago, and the girls are out in the kitchen fixing old Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I think it's going to be quite good because they got a lot of other trimmings that's going with it. So I think we got a full evening ahead of us too. We had company while we were at Mass. Dave and June Hayes called while they were attending their service at the Presbyterian Church, and they came after services. They left a note on the door and asked that we phone them. We called them Sunday evening, and they invited us to their home Tuesday at 4 p.m., which date we will keep. Nothing exciting on TV Sunday evening, so we got into a gin game. Grandma and Grandpa are not too up on gin, so we didn't play for stakes. After a full busy day, we agreed to retire early around 10 p.m. Monday was another day planned for touring the island. We went to the Hudson Seafood Restaurant to see the shrimp boats. We saw them processing the shrimp and bought some boiled shrimp to take home. We drove to the Old Fort Pub and spent considerable time reading the history from the historical markers around the fort. I was anxious to see the new Dolphin Head golf course. Looks fine to me. Someday I hope to play it. On our way back to Heritage Village, we drove through Sea Pine's private golf course. Did notice quite a few new homes being started in this area. Didn't mention all the places that we'd been to dine. Calabogie Cafe, Seacrest, we have been there twice. We went to the Golden Eagle Tavern for prime ribs, Hilton Inn Thanksgiving Buffet, Peddler's Steakhouse, Earl of Sandwich, Hardee's for lunch, Pizza Hut, C&Q. Think we like the Seacrest best for seafood. We spent a full day visiting Savannah. This is a great place for 4 Yankees to learn the history of one of our 13 original colonies and one of the important seaports of the southern states. After finishing up some business at a wholesale plumbing supply house, we took a driving tour of the city. It is most interesting the way this city is laid out with the many public squares and usually a monument or some historical marker in the center of the park. Savannah was the first settlement in Georgia and was started in 1733 during the Revolutionary War. It was captured by the British in 1778. The city was recaptured by the Continental Army in 1782. We made a visit to the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, which this church was built over 100 years ago. Most interesting drive is along the riverfront. Here many of the old shops are being restored. You could spend a week just visiting the historical places in Savannah. We had lunch at the Pirates House, and this is a must-stop for tourists visiting Savannah. We mentioned about Dave and June Haynes calling on us and setting up a date for us to visit with them to see their new home. It was decided we'd stop Monday afternoon around 4 o'clock. The Haynes and the Bennetts were friends of old and had close association when they lived in Youngstown. We were certainly given a warm welcome. They have a beautiful 3-bedroom home and certainly furnished in the latest. It was cool that afternoon, so they had a log fire going in the fireplace. Barbara, June Haynes immediately told us of knowing you and being at your home for a sorority meeting. They were gracious hosts and served snacks and refreshments, even invited us to stay for dinner. I hope sometime to play golf at the Port Royal with Dave Haynes. Mr. Haynes tells us he's a close friend with Father Schuler, pastor of the Holy Family Church. They work together on a Lions Club projects. Wednesday, we drove the Bennetts to the Savannah airport for their trip home. They sure fell in love with Sea Pines, and we wouldn't be surprised if they will return sometime. They're interested in the package deals put on by the for vacationers at the Hilton Inn and the Adventure Inn and other places on the island. Thursday a.m. we packed our car, had lunch at the CQ, waited for the arrival of the maid, which we find she comes around about 1:30. Picking up our mail, we were off for St. Augustine. We arrived shortly after dark. Travel was light at this time of the year, and no problem getting a good room. On our way early the next morning for Orlando to visit the factory where shower enclosures are made. We hated to pass up a visit to Disney World, but thought we would hold off until we had Margaret, Charles III, Rosemary, Philip, Peggy, or the Walters children with us. We had our lunch at Morrison's Cafeteria in Orlando and headed south for Deerfield Beach. We arrived home before dark after having our evening meal at the Royal Palm Plaza in Boca Raton. We were glad to settle down in our apartment at Eastway after being away for several weeks and being on the go all the time. It won't be long now until we'll have to start making preparation for Christmas. I have been selected to head the Christmas decorating committee, so soon we'll have to get our crews together to work on the Christmas light. Last year, the energy crisis held us back in using... We used only a few lights around the waterway. But the officers of the corporation are going to ask that we put up more lights than we had last year. Perhaps the lights will be strung on the railings on the 3rd, 5th, and 7th floors. 2 years ago, we had lights on the 6th to the 7th floors inclusive. A week has gone by since using this tape. The Christmas season is really here. The lighting and the decoration are all completed, and this place looks like a fairyland. When you drive in here after dark and see the Christmas lights on the building and around the waterway on both sides and the reflection of the lights in the water, it's really something. Santa comes early to our house, and today we received a beautiful poinsettia on the card, Margaret, Charles III, and Rosemary. Grandma also received a gown from the mailman with a birthday card, Margaret, Charles III, and Rosemary. I don't know what she's going to do with you youngsters.
Beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. Take a look in the 5 and 10, glistening once again, with candy canes and silver lanes aglow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, toys in every store. But the prettiest sight to see is the holly that will be on your own front door. A pair of high boots and a pistol that shoots is the wish of Barney and Ben. The dolphin will talk and the go for a walk is the hope for Janice and Jen. And Mom and Dad can hardly wait for school to start again. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. There's a tree in the Grand Hotel, one in the park as well, the sturdy kind that doesn't mind the snow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Soon the bells will start, and the thing that will make them ring is the carol that you sing right within your heart. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, toys in every store, but the prettiest sight to see is the holly that will be on your own front door. Sure, it's Christmas once more.
When you receive this tape, Christmas will be over for the year of 1975, but we'll be anxious to hear all about your Christmas. We hope you will put it on tape and send it to us. Your Christmas is going to be different than ours. We know we can go swimming and you can sled ride and ice skate when they never have what they never have in Florida. We haven't seen real snow in over 12 years. If Lake Newport is not froze over for skating, you can always go out to the outdoor ice rink in Mill Creek Park. We can just picture all the fun you will have sledding and skating with Sam, your new Labrador Retriever. Muffet wouldn't be much interested in running in the snow, but you can have Sam with you when you go sledding and skating. He is a cold weather dog. Maybe he will pull your sled for you. Do you remember the movie we showed you of your dad on ice skates on Lake Newport? Aunt Carol, Betty, and Mary Ann used to go skating there when they were your age. We suppose you have your house all decked out with Christmas decorations. We must tell you about our first Christmas at 130 Overhill Road. This was in 1939, at that time it was customary for all the residents of the Forest Glen area to put up elaborate outdoor lightings. The High Edison Company, that's the electric power company, promoted this and held a contest and awarded prizes for the best decorated homes. Jeanette Drive went all out and every house tried to outdo the other. Traffic was always a problem, and they had to have one-way traffic on this street between 6 and 11 p.m. during the Christmas season. Our neighbor Carl Ullman, president of the Dollar Savings and Trust Company, stopped me early one day in fall and asked me if I would enter the Christmas lighting contest. He always decorated his home with an elaborate Santa with his reindeer scene. Of course, he himself never did any of the work himself, but he hired someone to do it for him. I told him I would think it over. That was in October. The more I thought of it, the better I liked the idea. But what to do? I was milling around. It was milling around in my head one night when I couldn't go to sleep, and I thought of the Christmas Eve before when we were reading the poem. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. Then it came to the part where it said, the smoke that encircled his head like a wreath. I thought of encircling the living room window with an outdoor wreath. To do this, I had to make a frame for the wreath out of steel rod. Fortunately, I had a sheet metal shop, had an electric spot welder, so to make this frame, it was not too big of a job. This is where my experience in the florist business helped. I was able to buy my supplies from a wholesale florist. The wreath frame was over 10 feet in diameter, and I had to have a bale of moss to stuff it, several bundles of arborvitae greens for the background, For Christmas red, we used red ruscus and pine cones and a large red bow tied at the top. On the 3-bedroom window sills, we had candelabras with 7 small yellow light bulbs. A small wreath on the front door with 2 large candle holders at the front door entrance, all illuminated. 3 large spotlights were on the front lawn, which flooded the entire front of the house. Each window in the garage had a small lighted wreath. I could never have completed this job had it not been for the help of your dad, Aunt Betty, Carol, and Mary Ann. Well, to end this story, when the judges came around, we were awarded first prize, a Westinghouse electric roaster, which for many years we roasted our Thanksgiving and Christmas turkey. Have your dad and your aunts tell you more of this story. As long as we're talking about Christmas decorations, we might as well go on to 1940. Ohio Edison had the same promotion, and our family had such fun, we thought it would be nice to go for it again, with a new idea, of course. This time, we would wrap the entire house in one big Christmas package. So I started shopping around, and at Woolworth's, 5 and 10, I saw some bright red oilcloth. Oilcloth is a fabric material people used to use for tablecloths. That is what you might call in the old days. It was waterproof, had held its colors very well, and would not fade. This material came in bolts 54 inches wide, and I decided that we needed a ribbon to be the right proportion, should be about 27 inches wide. So I bought 2 bolts and split it down the middle. Between your mailbox and the first window, we erected a 2x4 piece of lumber and extended from the ground to the roof. On this job, I had to have some help from the men from the shop, as there needed some fancy ladder climbing. We ran a piece of this ribbon all across the front of the house, all the way around the side of Dr. Ben Miller's drive, and then from the roof to the ground between the mailbox and the window. Where the 2 ribbons crossed, we fastened a mammoth bow at the center. The center of the bow was decorated with pine cones and greens. In the living room, centered in the window, was a Christmas tree with all blue lights. The candlesticks were in the front entrance, wreath on the front door, small wreath in the garage window with lights, candle lights in each bedroom window, more spotlights on the front lawn to give bright illumination on the entire front of the house. People kept driving by in droves, not only to see our decoration, but all the others in the neighborhood. They had different judges, but I can repeat part of the story. We took first prize again. We received the same prize, so we gave it to my sister, Aunt May, because she kept Mary Ann when we took a trip to California with Betty, Carol, and your dad. Well, that again was a lot of fun, and we were planning on trying again. But do you know what? December the 8th, 1941, the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor. Then we were in war, and such things as Christmas decorations were out. You've heard 2 Christmas stories. Now I have one about a memorable Thanksgiving we had. The big snow that happened, it was about 1951 or 52. Ask your dad, he will remember. Your dad was going to prep school at St. Vincent's and Sister Mary Ann was attending St. Xavier, both schools located in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Betty was attending St. Mary's at Notre Dame, and Carol was going to Boardman. We had an unusual good turkey dinner at home, as we were all home on Thanksgiving Day. Friday, Rosemary and Eddie Garonin asked us to come to their house for dinner. Early in the evening, a snowstorm started at that time. The Garonins lived on Bonnie Bray Avenue, that's near Idora Park. The roads were beginning to get slick, so we cut our visit short and started for home. We reached Overhill Road. It was coming down pretty fast, and I was just able to make it up the slippery drive and to get the car in the garage. Carol and Betty were out, but they were able to make it home. So we all bedded down for the night, and all was cozy and comfortable. But when we woke the next morning, remember that line in the poem? Not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. Well, this morning, that was literally true. Everything was covered with snow. A record snowfall we had never experienced, almost 36 inches. That meant nothing could move. We were really snowed in. We had our radio in those days, and that's how we kept in touch with what was going on around town. The snow came down so fast the snowplows couldn't get out in the streets to open up the roads. Saturday, nothing moved. Sunday, it was the same way, although they were beginning to get some of the roads open. So the emergency vehicles were getting through. We were fortunate in our house. We had food in our refrigerator, even some leftover turkey. Grandma had plenty of flour and yeast, so we were able to have some of those delicious fresh rolls that you know how Grandma likes to make. Milk was in the refrigerator, and Monday we started to run out of things. Saturday and Sunday we were sure all together, and we played games, piano, records, and radio. Sunday afternoon we were looking out the front window, and we saw one of our neighbors, George Pugh, who lives down the street. That's the last house on the south side of Overhill. He had walked from downtown and came in on a railroad train to the Erie station, and he went to the Youngstown Club. Found there was no way to get transportation home, so he started to walk south on Market Street. He was about exhausted when we saw him, so your dad and I put on our jackets and broke a path for him to reach his home. Monday we were beginning to get some of the streets open. We had tire chains on one of our service trucks, and our truck was able to take to the road. Betty was supposed to be back at St. Mary's College, so they got the trains running. I think it was about Tuesday, or maybe it was Wednesday. And I was able to take her and another girl from Youngstown who went to St. Mary's, Eleanor Fales, a niece of Ralph Dillon's of the Standard Slag Company. She lived on either Euclid or Rush Boulevard. They were not allowing private cars on the road. My truck carried an emergency permit, so I was free to go. You see, Grandpa had a degree, Doctor of Furnaces, and sometimes I had to go out and see a sick heating furnace. Your dad and Aunt Mary Ann had to stay home a few days longer until the roads were clear and we could drive to Latrobe, Pennsylvania. So they had a few more days off than school than they had expected. Now they were talking about a trip from Youngstown to Latrobe, going back and forth to St. Vincent's. This brings to mind another rather interesting trip we had there one time. It could have been either a Thanksgiving or a Christmas vacation. We went to Latrobe to pick up Dad and Mary Ann, and on the way back the weather was quite dark and foggy. Carol will remember this. She at the time was going to Dunbarton in Washington, and we had given her permission to fly home to Youngstown. I think, well, she had a cold, and we didn't want to subject her to a Pullman train all night riding in a cold, drafty train. So she was to take this flight from Washington into Youngstown. And on the way home, we were on the road home with with Dad and Mary Ann, and I did notice how the weather was turning bad on the turnpike. It was foggy, it was raining. Of course, Carol's flight wasn't supposed to start for some time yet. Anyway, we got home, and it came around the time when that flight was supposed to be in. The weather was really, really bad. I recall I called the airport and asked if they had a report on the plane. They said no, they couldn't tell me anything about it. I said, well, other than it had left Washington. Now, I must tell you that this is before the days of the jets. This was a propeller-type plane, probably a DC-3 or something like that was used by Capital Airlines, and they could not fly to the heights that the jets today. On a jet today, you're up there 45,000 feet, and you're way above the weather. The weather doesn't bother you. And when you approach an airport, you've got instrument landing. They didn't have that in those days, and it was quite nerve-wracking. So I recall calling the airport, and I said, well, that plane, what are they going to do about it? Well, he said if they can't land in Youngstown, they'll take it somewhere else, maybe Chicago. Well, that kind of got us a little annoyed. And came the time when that plane, I was counting how many gallons of gas that thing had, how long could it possibly stay in the air. And we sat there, of course, we were biting our fingernails, and we were just kind of walking up and pacing the floor. The phone rang. Who was it? It was Carol. Where was she? She was in Detroit. Boy, we were happy, we were relieved. At least she was on the ground. Now, how was she going to get back to Youngstown? Well, anyway, she said that they'd fly her from, or she told us they were going to send her on a train to Cleveland, and from Cleveland she would come in on a bus. Well, this was an all-night ordeal for her because she did get by train, and I had no idea and couldn't imagine when she might come in. So we were, of course, on edges all the time, and you know what? About 9 o'clock in the morning, we got a telephone call. Who was it? Carol. Where was she? Down, standing in front of the Dollar Bank building. What'd we do? Right away, quick, run down, pick her up. That was really a real reunion. Have Aunt Carol tell you that story sometime. It might be interesting, and maybe she can tell you more details than I. But anyway, that was back in the days when flying was not quite as popular as it was today. They still had trains running, so you had a choice of flying or using a plane. And most people at that time used trains because, as I say, they didn't have the jets, they didn't fly so high, they didn't have all the comforts of flying in those days that they have today. You know, I could correct that story when I said I'd call the airport at once. I bet you we called the airport a dozen times trying to find out what was going on. Now that brings me to a story that I have to tell about flying one time. I flew to California. I had to make a trip out there to see Aunt Tress, who was sick. Well, I went out there, took care of everything, and I wanted to be home for our 25th wedding anniversary. I knew if I had to fly, or else I'd have to take the train, and if I took the train, I wouldn't be home for about 3 days. It took 3 days to go from Los Angeles to Youngstown in those days. So I bought a ticket on a United plane, and a friend of mine from Pasadena drove me to the airport. It was foggy. Believe me, they get fog in California. So as we drove out, he took me down from Pasadena. He took me down to the one of the large hotels in Los Angeles where the limousine picked you up. And I was getting pretty apprehensive about the fog because you could hardly see in an automobile. So as we were going out, I said to the limousine man, what's going to happen? Supposing they can't take off? Well, he said, if they can't take off from the Los Angeles airport, we'll drive you out to Burbank. I guess that was they didn't have the smog in Burbank. So we got to the Los Angeles airport, and believe me, I was up on the observation deck at the airport looking out over the field, and honestly, you couldn't see well, you couldn't see from your house down to Glenwood Avenue on account of the fog. Anyway, up pulled this plane. Now this was a DC-6. That was a four-motored prop-type plane. They pulled it up to the ramp. I took one look at it, and I thought, I hated like thunder to get on that thing, but you know, that thing at that time, that plane was valued at about $8 million, and I thought, if United Airlines are going to pull that thing up there, take a chance on putting $8 million in the air, or taking a chance on getting it off the ground, so I think, well, I think I'll go along with them. Anyway, I got on, and there we were on the runway. We got the clearance, and they revved up the motors, and the old thing started going down. The old motors was roaring down there, and I was holding on to the side of that seat with gritting my teeth, hoping they'd make the end of that runway, because I didn't know how he could see it, and the only thing when I looked outside of that plane, I couldn't see anything. Oh, the big relief when that thing lifted off into the air. And in a few moments, just a very few moments, we were above the city of Los Angeles, and I looked out of that plane, and there were those beautiful lights down there that I couldn't see when I was on the ground, but I could see them. Anyway, we circled the airport, and we started heading toward Chicago. It was a nonstop between Los Angeles and Chicago. That was quite a flight in those days because, as I say, it was a prop plane. They carried only so much gasoline. There was four motors on it, and they consumed a lot of fuel. The plane wasn't completely loaded. There was plenty of empty seats there, and I had a seat right near the wing. Some people could go to sleep, but I couldn't, because all I could see looking out at that wing was a ball of fire coming out of those motors. Believe me, I was happy when daylight came, because when the sun came up and the motors, the light, you couldn't see the fire. At least I was quite relieved. Anyway, we landed in Chicago, and I got on another plane in Chicago. It was headed for Hartford, Connecticut, but it had a stopover at Cleveland. So this one was full. It was really, people were standing in the aisles on that one. And it landed at the Cleveland, and at Cleveland I picked up another. This was a DC-3, a 24-passenger job. It was only a two-motor plane, and it landed at the Akron-Canton Airport, picked up a few passengers there, and flew on to Youngstown. Well, I had left California in weather like we have in Florida here. It came along that when I got out of the plane, I walked from down the steps of the plane, my feet hit ice. Oh, I was surprised, and I slipped right, my feet went out from under me, and down I went. I wasn't hurt, of course, but so I went into the airport, got my luggage, and I was very anxious to get home on that trip. I love to fly, but starting off in fog on a prop plane was quite an experience. I didn't care to do too much of that anymore. But now I'm anxious to take a jet. I want to try a jet and see how it feels to fly from Florida to Pittsburgh or Youngstown or Pittsburgh and Cleveland in 2.5 hours. That must be quite the thing. I was on that plane out of Los Angeles for 8 hours between Los Angeles and Chicago, and several other hours from Chicago to Cleveland, and then from Cleveland to Akron, and from Akron to Youngstown. It was more than a 12-hour trip, which today is only perhaps 4 hours between here and Los Angeles. We haven't talked much to you kiddos about Florida this year. And you know, it just comes to my mind that we have spent 12 winters. It's been 12 years since we have seen any snow. We've been here in this Eastway Village, this building, the Massachusetts building, for 10 years. And prior to that, we were 2 years up on 16th Place, where we had a home that we leased for the wintertime. And our first year here, we moved in here. It was about a week before Christmas. And they had some Christmas lighting up then. And of course, I wasn't in on that. But the next year, I got interested in getting on the Christmas lighting. So it was that year we extended it a little more, and we had lights originally. We had lights on the waterway. Rosemary remembers this because she saw them. However, last year we had the energy crisis, and we didn't do much lighting. But prior to that, we had lights on. The year before, we had lights on every floor, on the railings of every floor. And Philip and Peggy would remember that because when they were here at Christmas time that year, they would go around every night at 11 o'clock and turn the lights out. And I gave them that as their job. They'd have to go up the elevator and get off at each floor and turn a switch to turn the lights out on that one. Then they'd go to the south elevator, do the same thing. Then they'd go down by the pool, and there was a switch down there that turned the lights out, that was circled around the pool. Another light switch that controlled all the lights in the waterway. And it was quite a sight. But last year, when the energy crisis and gas and fuel oil was so scarce that the power company didn't want you to use much, so we went down really to a minimum. However, this year of 1975, the board of directors, they wanted to have they wanted it back in the ways that I had it set up for them 2 or 3 years ago. They did, but we didn't quite go that far along. We put lights on the 3rd floor, the 5th floor, and the 7th floor. The 2, 4, and 6 we left off, but you know, that really makes it quite attractive around here. When you go out here at night and you walk out on the driveway and looking